Rico Verhoeven just went 10 hard rounds with Oleksandr Usyk, the heavyweight GOAT of boxing. But somehow, the UFC has never made a serious offer to get him to transition into MMA. Not a respectable one, anyway. But at the same time, we have guys like Tai Tuivasa who are literally trash and on a 7-fight losing streak in the sport, on the organization, still on the roster. Like, deadass, what are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing? The UFC has more money than ever. The UFC has more exposure than ever. The big Paramount deal, exposure on CBS, but still somehow we aren't getting these deals done. We keep lowballing elite talent while these heavier divisions suffer because of the lack of talent. And I'm not necessarily saying that Rico Verhoeven comes over to the sport and has the exact Alex Pereira run from kickboxing and becomes one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. But why wouldn't you give him the chance to do something like that? We've done this before, bring the elite kickboxer over, and clearly he's a competent combat sports athlete because he just walked over into boxing and gave Usyk one of the fights of his life. Why would you not want the heavyweight GOAT of glory to come over, put on exciting fights, because he does have a striking style, he has prior MMA fights, and there's built-in storylines with guys like Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira, coming over from kickboxing and doing extremely well. This weak-ass heavyweight division could use a little spice to it. We got a guy like Rico. He could add to this heavyweight division. We have Ciryl Gane. We have Alex Pereira. We got Tom Aspinall. Besides that, underneath, there's not really much. It feels shallow. And imagine the kickboxing fans that you could bring over for a possible Alex Pereira versus Rico Verhoeven matchup that probably would have never happened in kickboxing because at that point in time, they were competing in two different weight classes. Instead, we lowball Rico Verhoeven and he never makes a UFC debut. He never comes over to MMA full-time as a legit UFC competitor. Why? Because boxing, once again, outbids MMA and decides to pay him a bunch of money to fight Oleksandr Usyk. And this is where a lot of fans, including me, get frustrated with Dana, Hunter, and the UFC. Because time and time again, you hear the same story from a lot of these fighters. I'm going to bring up Alex Pereira again. His former opponent, Artem, I forget his last name, it's a Russian fella, gets a knockout on the Contender Series and never makes his debut because the UFC lowballs him before he could sign his first official contract. And this kind of stuff happens a lot. You constantly hear about UFC negotiations that go nowhere because they lowball the fighters. Especially if you made your name outside the UFC, it's almost like they don't want to mess with you at all. Meanwhile, we keep mediocre fighters like a Tai Tuivasa or a Louis Sutherland because they're cheap and we could just throw them on any card. Then we end up with the apex slop with a bunch of guys that don't matter and a bunch of heavyweights that we don't care to see. And that shit drives a hardcore fan like me literally insane. Because I'm going to keep it all the way 1,000. I feel like the UFC does this just because they want to keep the machine going. And it feels like they don't genuinely care about what any of us fans think. It's all about keeping them wheels turning so the company can keep making profit. And you guys are still going to watch it either way. Feels like it's more about maintaining a budget than putting on a good product for the fans and making the roster literally the best versus the best. The premise of which the UFC was literally created on. And this ain't to get on the Louis Sutherlands or the Tai Tuivasas of the world, but we have to be real here and talk about them. Tai Tuivasa, he's a fun guy. I get it. The shoey, all that. I understand. But if a guy is on a 7-fight losing streak and he's still on the roster, who am I not to question the validity of the UFC best versus the best? I'm sorry if we can't get a guy like Rico here, but somehow we maintain a guy like Tai Tuivasa who has to at least be making $500,000 to show up. I'm going to question your roster strategy and what the fuck you're doing. Especially when an elite level athlete cannot get a proper offer. I heard that they lowballed this shit out of Rico Verhoeven. And it just goes to show that the UFC has gotten extremely comfortable as a promotion. And it's really not their fault. I feel like it's the fans' fault because you guys are going to watch anyway. The amount of times that I'm on a live stream and I criticize the UFC lineup, the fights that week, and I get called a casual because I'm questioning the slop they give us. So when you get people that are like, well, at least there's fights this weekend, we miss out on the best athletes in the world, the best combat sports athletes. Because like it or not, the UFC has a monopoly on this shit. And if we don't make a difference and tune out, they're going to be like, okay, well, Louis Sutherland, that's enough to keep the fucking wheel spinning. And that mindset isn't going to do anything but hurt the sport, especially in a division like the heavyweight division that was literally one of the most entertaining divisions in the sport at one point. I know you guys remember the days of Cain Velasquez, JDS, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem, Brock Lesnar. Bro, it used to feel larger than life and the heavyweight division felt legit. Now, it feels like a bunch of fat guys and the athletic guys just go to the top. That shit isn't right because heavyweight is supposed to feel like the larger than life division. That's supposed to be the division that puts the butts in the seats. And lately, I'm not even going to lie to you. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The flyweight division is better than the heavyweight division. There's more exciting fights happening in the smaller, lower weight classes like 125, 170, 135, for example. And at heavyweight, I'm getting on UFC Perf, I'm getting Louis Sutherland and Tai fucking Tuivasa, bruh. I'm getting excited for Salsa Boy and Volkov. The fight wasn't even fun. They didn't look good. And that's why I'm frustrated, because the UFC is supposed to be the best promotion in the world. It is the best promotion in the entire world. But because of that, I expect literal, actual good talent on the roster, especially in the heavyweight division, which is supposed to be the premier division, baddest man on the planet and all that. And nowadays, we don't have the best roster in the world. I feel like we're getting the most comfortable roster for the UFC in the world, the safest, the cheapest. Like, this is supposed to be where the best fighters are at, bruh. It just makes me question, what the hell is the UFC doing? But y'all give me your thoughts down in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video and tune in for more content. Hit that notification bell. Do all that. I love y'all. Peace.